Hello, everyone, and welcome again to another Teacher Joseph podcast. Today, we're going to look at regional accents around the UK. So, the first one I'm going to play for you is the typical Southern England or London accent. This accent is perhaps the most used and most respected. You could assume that it is in many ways our kind of national accent, because before the Broadcasting Act of 1990, it was what we all heard on television, as regional accents were not encouraged or allowed, particularly in news reports. They were allowed in dramas, but for news, government information, advertisements, we were forced to hear the London accent, received pronunciation more or less, although received pronunciation is perhaps not really used at all now except by our Queen. You'll hear what sounds like a southern accent in this first clip. It's not exactly received pronunciation, but it's more or less getting there. And here we are.
Well, the founder of the modern Olympics famously declared that the most important element of the Games isn't the winning, but the taking part. With that in mind, here are a few of those memorable moments. From all of us here at BBC News, a very good night. Bye-bye.
So you heard there what was basically the Southern London accent, which is the accent that we all know, are all familiar with, and we all just simply recognise. And even news bulletins today around the country, they tend to model themselves on that, although there are some stronger accents. Let's look at some of them now. This is a video clip from the Liverpool Echo. Okay, so I'm just going to play the audio for you. It's called Exploring Liverpool's Most Dangerous Housing Estates, according to the Liverpool Echo, which is like a local newspaper.
Right, hello and welcome to another video. And I do hope this is not my last video. I am off to a place in Liverpool called Primrose Court. Now I'm told it's a no-go zone for pretty much anyone who doesn't live there. Taxi drivers have been threatened and stuff like that, to the point where they pull up outside the court and don't go inside. Right, so I've just had a quick Google to see what this place is all about.
Right, so I'm not sure if you would catch some of his words there, even though he was speaking very slowly. I noticed he dropped the T of saying that, rather than that. You can replay it as often as you like, of course, and he's often mentioning, I think, tatty drivers, which presumably in Liverpool means bad drivers. I've never heard drivers being described as tatty. I know the word tatty in different contexts. If something is tatty, it usually means not prepared properly, like a document is tatty, especially if it looks bad, maybe has some coffee stains on it. But I've never heard of a tatty driver. Elsewhere in the UK, like in Scotland, for example, a tatty as a noun is a potato. So you can see very quickly how confusing this could become. He's also mentioning the name of his town there, which is Liverpool, which he mentions as Liverpool, which is, again, a little bit hard. I mean, if he speaks fast, I wouldn't understand what he's saying. The government's put many of the government services, their offices in Liverpool and in Newcastle, and so it's normal for us to have to call them And of course, because it's a very impoverished area, they use local people who've been unemployed for a while in call centres. So when we have to call them for anything, it's very, very hard to understand them. So you're not alone. If you're wondering why you can't understand, it's exactly the same for us. But once your ear gets used to it, you can pick up the words. If they're idiomatic, you're not going to catch the meaning, and neither am I. Like in this case, tatty. So it's not just about English, it's a little bit more than that. It's about how much of English and regional accents you've been exposed to. As I'm always saying, if you're learning English and you're serious about it, you need to choose an area in the English-speaking world, not only for the purposes of learning English, but for the purposes of identity, who you want to be in the English world. These questions are not easy, but they're very important, because then you can begin to drill down into the words and idioms which are used locally. So if you love London, or if you're not sure, London is a good place to begin. If maybe you're thinking of emigrating to Washington or Boston, of course, you should use their regional news services to begin to understand. So anyway, let's look at some more accents around the UK. The next accent we're going to listen to now is from Wales, and this is a Welsh government official. In fact, he's the President of Wales. His name is Mark Drakeford. For those of you who don't know, Northern Ireland, the UK, our passports are called the UK and Northern Ireland, okay? So basically, the main bits of this country is one island, which is Wales, Scotland and England, and Northern Ireland in addition. And then, of course, there are the territories over the world. So the reason why I'm explaining this is just in case you're confused by the term President of Wales, because every area of the UK now has its own local government or local parliament. We're not all ruled by Westminster, although England doesn't have its own government. It's just run by the central government. So the central government has responsibility for defences and these things, border controls, refugees, but the other bits are all looked after locally, and every year more and more power is given to the local governments, which is quite controversial because some of those governments, like Scotland, are now calling for independence. But anyway, let's get back to hear Mark Drakeford and his Welsh accent. I'll be curious to know if you understand any of this. I mean, he is an official in the government, and he is speaking clearly as far as I can hear.
End of last week, we had already decided that we would be introducing new measures for retail and for workplaces when they reopen after Christmas. On Tuesday, we decided that sporting fixtures will have to move behind closed doors for the time being. And today, I can set out further measures we are taking to protect people's health.
Right, the interesting thing there, and in all of the accents we've heard so far, is their intonations, because you'll hear that when they're stressing something, even if you don't understand the words, you can pick up the emotion if you listen carefully. I mean, in the first clip especially, she was giving a very warm goodbye. It was kind of, so that's it from me, good night. It's a very kind of nice closing thing. In this clip by Mark Drakeford, he's kind of being reassuring as well by moving his voice up and down. So even if you don't catch the words, you hear that there's a message being given there. And we do this all the time. You know, we use intonation to let you know how we feel. We don't use words to do that. So, for example, if you ask me, Teacher Joseph, how are you today? I can say, fine. I can say, fine. Or I can say, Yeah, fine. And you know, in each of those three responses, they're different, but the word is the same. So my politeness does not allow me to say bad. But you can work out that maybe I'm not so good if I use the last one there. So you need to be quite careful to listen to people's intonation to hear what they're really telling you, because it's a little bit different from the words, you know? For example, if you hear a news report and the woman is saying, 3 people died today during a COVID epidemic, you can hear there that there's a kind of concern, but it would be a little bit unusual for her to say, 3 people died today in a COVID epidemic. The words are the same, but there's a very different mood there. So the mood is always what's going to tell you what somebody means. And as a British person, I would expect people to know how I feel by my intonation and not by my words. So, for example, if I'm giving you homework and I say something like, I would be grateful if you could finish that by Thursday, you might think, oh, well, yeah, he said he would be grateful if I do it by Thursday, which means I could do it after that, because he didn't say, do it on Thursday. And likewise, if you ask me a question and I say, that should be okay, then I'm saying, yes, do it. So you see, it's very easy to miss the actual meaning of what's being said, not only by intonation, but by our politeness. And it does cause us a lot of problems, especially these days in a multicultural society. Let's do one more accent. This one is a Scottish accent. Okay, now the newspaper interviewer, or maybe I can call him the TV interviewer or TV presenter, has a very strong Glasgow accent. Nicola Sturgeon, who's the Scottish First Minister, is more or less the same as President. She has a Glasgow accent as well. It's not really Glasgow, but it's definitely west coast of Scotland. And she's speaking very politely. So we're going to hear both of them talking. It's interesting that here the TV presenter has a very strong accent compared to her, and she's speaking slowly. And she also looks very bitter in this YouTube clip, which is called "In Full, Scotland Would Have Backed Independence to Remain in EU," says Sturgeon. So here we go. Let's have a listen to this.
First Minister, you're launching a series of independence papers tomorrow. Is this the start of the independence referendum campaign?
Yes, this is the start of the campaign afresh to make the case for independence in an interdependent world. There have been many changes since the referendum in 2014. In many ways, the world is a different place. The UK is certainly a very different place. In fact, I think if we could turn the clock back and people in 2014 could have foreseen the path that the UK would have taken out of the European Union, Boris Johnson as Prime Minister, then Scotland undoubtedly would have voted yes back then. Tomorrow's paper will be very much a scene setter.
Right, so just to pick up on a few of her words there, you might have heard a very stressful, or it sounds quite stressful the way she said it, word world. And of course in the southern part of the UK, that would become wowed. In received pronunciation, it would be wowed, with that R vanishing almost completely. She said finally they're a scene setter, to set the scene for something, and she also had a hard R with the word tomorrow. Whereas again in received pronunciation, or in the south of England, that would be tomorrow, with the R almost again vanishing. Depending on whether it's received or southern, tomorrow, I think is received pronunciation, and tomorrow would be again the south of England, with the R becoming a slight W. Oh, it's really interesting, all these different accents. We'll just quickly do one more. It would be wrong of me to leave out Northern Ireland, and they have probably the strongest accent of all of us. So let's listen to them.
No big policy changes at a time of great need. Still, among those affected, there is some understanding.
It's part of the process in that, as a country that has gone through all of this, we're going to have to keep going through these little step backwards before we can go forward, because not everybody can agree on everything all the time.
There is also anger.
So much with the waiting list in the health service, the economy, education. I mean, to me, they're the most important things that need to be sorted out.
That can't be now.
That can't be done. So I'm really frustrated.
And sadly, apathy.
My two sons are obviously, they're in their 20s. They both went out and voted, and they're giving me an ear bashing for not. But I have reasons as to why I didn't do it. It's the same old, and it gradually wears you down to the point that you just go.
Still.
Right, so that was the Northern Irish accent, and the guy who was asking, he didn't ask very much there, but he just interjected with some of the south of England, and the people there had a range of different accents, but again, you could hear by the intonation really whether they were angry or sad. The first one sounded like he was not angry exactly, but he was somehow a little bit upset. You know, he was trying to find a solution. He was trying to state what the problem was. We could hear his anguish. And the second one, he was angry. He was saying, well, it's the same old. And that means the same old, you know, the same old story. And the Irish, of course, have a few political problems, you know. He was talking about his children there as well in that clip. So even though you might not catch the words, you can catch their anguish, their suffering in what they're saying, because you can hear that they're really throwing out some emotion for you to catch. It's the same old, you know, he's loud, he's trying to stress that he's upset about it, you know. But catching those words are very, very difficult with that accent, even for all of us. So my advice is the same. What you really need to do is to drill down into a particular area, choose an area that you like, drill down into that particular area that you want to learn from, and make that your home in the English world. Well, I hope you found this helpful. If you have any comments or constructive feedback, please do leave a comment. I won't know what you're looking for until you tell me. All right, so thank you very much, and I'll talk with you all soon. Goodbye.